Hello, 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 boys and girls. How are you? You are listening to the Westcliffe Climb. Of course, I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Paul Looney. How are you, buddy?
Good morning, Joshua Duffy. I'm doing splendidly. Thank you. How about you?
Splendid. What is the weather report and the overall plant growth that's happening around you? I don't ever feel complete
Oh,
unless I get the full picture.
oh my word. It is sunny and cool. The first rosebuds are busting out. The red buds are starting to fade. They were brilliantly beautiful. Got lots of daffodils, still a few hyacinths coming up. My my flowering quince has been beautiful this year. It's a great year, and I'm super excited about spring busting out all over.
Wow. And you guys can visit Paul at your local Garden Ridge Pottery or no, no, you can't. Okay. No, that is all personal. That is
Lowe's, you
amazing.
can visit me at Lowe's or Nature's Way, um, or sometimes Houston Lawn and Garden. But
I love it.
but you ought to come out to 11040 Bluebell Drive and see the gardens in person.
It is a thing to behold. And if anyone out here has never seen your setup, I just thought the topography was always like rolling, and then you explained to me, no, I that's literally thousands of bags of dirt that I have imported. Love it, love it, love it. Well, it is a beautiful day, and we only get about 10 of them in Houston where you can walk outside and not sweat profusely within 2 minutes. So, this is a nice little season. I love it. I love it for as
Mhm.
long as it lasts. And then once summer comes on, it starts to get rough quick. But I digress. It's good to be with you. Um, Wanted to dive in on some conversations of life and life change. The video that we shot was pre-beard, and I looked at it and I thought, wow, the guy in that video looks awfully young. So he clearly hadn't taken quite the ministry beating that he has since. And look at the exuberance in his face. Anyway, so the video I really shot, had no idea it was going to end up being almost 20 minutes long. Sorry, rookie mistake early on shooting. But just looking at life phases and life changes, and I wanted to get you to weigh in on a couple of things. One is, if the context of where I was going was just looking at the different phases of life, the different challenges that come with those different phases of life, and our disposition along the way. I wanted to ask you, where do you find in your practice is quite possibly the most challenging transition of individuals?
That is a super cool question, Josh. And the answer really is very unique to each individual. There are some people who have challenges in bonding when they are born prematurely or have some medical illness as an infant, or
Mm,
have a mother who has postpartum depression, or parents who are on drugs. That bonding, which forms the foundation for everything else, can be the most challenging, not only in that phase, but throughout life. If you have difficulties with bonding and connecting, it radically affects the trajectory of your life. For others like me, the that phase of claiming ownership of your own soul and being able to say no and mine, for some of us, that was the most challenging thing, because we were so tuned in to making others happy and so fearful of conflict that instead of saying no, we said yes when we should have said no. And
wow.
again, that can follow us throughout life. I'm 66 freaking years old, and I still, yesterday I said yes to some things that I should have said no to. I'm not kidding. It's tragic, but that for me was the most challenging time. For others, it is the school years where you're bullied or told that
Mm,
you're not good enough, where you deal with shame or rejection. Others find adolescence particularly challenging dealing with social influences, with cliques and dating, and feeling um, the challenges of competition
Right.
um, and exclusion. For others, it's those early adult years trying to make that transition to being responsible for who you are, or for others, it's that office chair that where you're trying to establish your place in uh, your what do you call it career. That can be the most challenging, I think. And for others, it's that last phase of being in a wheelchair, being dependent again, like
Yeah.
we were when we came into the world. So I work with people who come to me at all those different places, or because they were knocked down at one of those, knocked off one of those chairs, so to speak, or had their
Yeah.
chair tipped over, whether it was the high chair or the rocking chair, the office chair or the school chair. Um, those events can be radically um, destructive. But the good news is that when we get knocked off our chair is the prime time that we can once we're knocked off our chair, we can put Jesus on the throne. We can
Hmm.
let him give us the ability to recover from those challenging transitions or those traumas that deeply affected us. And that's what's so beautiful about the Beatitudes, when Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." When we
Yeah.
when we get knocked off the throne or the chair, then that's when the kingdom is most at hand, most ready for us to embrace um, the throne and Jesus on the throne. Then we get to crawl on his lap and be on the chair with him, which is yay, the
There it
best.
is. Yeah. Well, let me ask you then. Let's just say you have one particular transition that goes rough for whatever reason. I mean, as you so eloquently just walked us through, which I love, by the way. Um, does that set us up if we don't acknowledge it or we don't deal with it? Does it set us up for every subsequent transition to be off kilter? Would you say?
I think the simple short answer is yes. Now we can, like, let's say in my case, I did pretty good at bonding, not very good with individuation and separation. So in interactions where connecting is important, I'm like, hey, I'm good at this. I can make people feel loved and
Right.
valued. Um, but there comes time for a conflict or a challenge, or for me to take the role of a prophet and speak the uncomfortable or unfavorable message, that's when, yeah, my early brokenness on that, that chair will continue to affect me until I surrender my pain to God and trust him to step into that discomfort, that place where my brokenness is likely to show up, and trust him that even when I'm weak, he can be strong.
Wow. So, so good. Makes so much sense. I mean, of course it's probably obvious the chair that I'm sitting in right now is the one where it is just extreme chaos moving. You're building, you're growing, get in the minivan. I said stop hitting your sister. Do you have your pacifier? Where's your pacifier? Get the pacifier. No, we're not going to Chick-fil-A right now. Now it's time to go to bed. Like that's just like it's like every day, basically. Who wants mac and cheese? And the day's over already. And I don't know, it's as someone you walk with so many people. I feel like this particular chair that is such a challenge is being present, being present, being present, being present. And I know you and I have crossed this bridge before topically as well, but it is just like this one, it seems like if you're not careful, you'll be in the next one so fast. And and yeah, I mean, so do you have any insight on that when you're dealing with people that are in this phase, this chair, of what it means to actually enjoy sitting in it? Because at times you can go, This is so crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just want to get out of this chair. And then when you get out of the chair, then you look back at this chair and go, oh, it was so sweet. Remember how little they were? But talk to someone who's dealing with how little they are, right?
Sure.
Right now.
Well,
What's
well,
your thought?
you put your finger on it beautifully when you talked about being present, because when you're dealing with with small souls, with children who are finding their identity, if they have no one present with them that will get down eyeball to eyeball with them and see them, to nurture their precious souls in their joys and their sorrows, then that child will struggle with feeling that they can be authentic, that they can be seen, that they can be valued, that they can be um, engaged with in a way that supports them in growing, in metabolizing their pain and letting it go. When a mother says to her child who's hurt, "Let me kiss it and make it better,"
Mm,
that simple act teaches a child that you can heal from trauma, and you heal from trauma by letting somebody in and letting them carry some of the pain for you. And
yeah.
that's really where that challenge of mac and cheese, or you know uh, uh, showing up at the ball game or whatever, that that being there for them to feed their little souls, not just the mac and cheese, but the meaningful connection of a daddy who sympathizes when they fall down, but who sets them back on their feet again and says, "You're okay."
Yeah. Yeah. So then would you say like that's kind of the one of the tremendous benefits of, let's just say, counseling is that if if you're out there listening to us and one particular chair for you was very painful and difficult, for any number of reasons, how to maybe set up the next generation so that their experience may not quite be the same. I mean, is that one of the benefits of being able to maybe break let's say it's a generational cycle of a particular chair was painful for dad, now it's painful for me, and then how you break that? What would you say to that?
Well, the breaking of it is something that requires surrender to God,
Hmm.
because what happens for many of us, and I'm guilty of this. If you have a parent who errs on one side, who is overly rigid, overly controlling, overly harsh or critical or withholding, the temptation is to think, I don't ever want my child to feel the pain of a parent who is too much a disciplinarian.
Hmm.
So I naturally am going to swing to the other side of it, and I may be too gratifying, giving, too quick
Ah.
to let them off the hook and be kind instead of harsh. And the irony of that is that the swing from one side to the other often produces the same kind of mischief in the child, because what children need is to see a parent who can be very merciful and loving and forgiving, and
Right.
who can hold the boundary and say, "Oh no, ma'am, no, sir, this is not happening. You do not talk to your mother that way,
Hmm.
and if you do it again, there will be hell to pay." I'm not sure what that hell is going to look like, but we'll figure it out. Um, so there's that ability to maintain flexibility, so that, because if we enter into judgment, if I judge my dad as, he's harsh, I never want to be like my dad. Well, then I'm consigning myself to be over here because I never want to be like my dad. Well, sometimes I need to be like my dad, but not all the time. I need to have that pendulum swing where I can give my kid pops if they need it,
Yeah.
and then hold them and comfort them and reassure them of daddy's love. And
Hmm.
the only reason that daddy gave you pops is because what you did could hurt your brother or you, or,
Yeah.
when you run into the street, that could hurt you bad. I need you to know that that is not okay.
Yeah.
And it's because I love you so much.
I love that. Love it. Love it. The thing I was curious about is, one of the second to last chairs, of course, you're in the rocking chair. And the idea being that at that point, you're firmly planted, your roots are down, you have the shade of your accomplishments, family, hopefully kids and grandkids, maybe even great grandkids, and quite literally the fruit of all of that labor is there. Do you find most of us either we over on either end of the spectrum? Either we don't, maybe we're too hard in that we only focus on the handful of fruit that fell that may have been rotted, or a branch that snapped off. Do we tend to focus too much on that? Or would you say we tend to kind of make everything grandiose and everything was great? When people hit that chair and they start kind of transitioning to some degree of maybe evaluating legacy and what have I done, where do you find most people tend to land, or is it somewhere in between? What is it you see?
Yeah. Well, it's again a great question. Most of us tend to err on one side or the other. Um, in psychological terms, we talk about people who are externalizers. Or I talk about people who are externalizers or internalizers. The externalizers tend to focus on what happened to them that was somebody else's fault.
Mm,
Internalizers tend to focus on the things where they dropped the ball, where they bombed. Um, but in that rocking chair phase, we have the distinct possibility, if we want to take it, to look back on the course of our life and decide that we are going to look at the story of our life as neither the hero nor the villain of the story. That we're going to look back on our life and put God in the hero position
mm,
and us in the position of servant. Did we drop the ball as a servant at times? Oh, yes. Did we follow through to our best uh, possibility in other cases? Yes, we did. But as Joseph says, even the things that were external that we could not control, what his brothers did for evil, he says God meant it for good. And he looks at the story of his life as a journey toward a destination. Where he says, but God meant it for good to the saving of many souls. And the big risk of the rocking chair um, is that we think we're done,
hmm.
but it's in the rocking chair that we have the best possibility to mentor others. I met with my good friend Denny McGuire, he's just a brilliant business person, wildly successful, just so kind-hearted. And he's 75 now. Hope you don't mind me saying that, Denny. And his mission right now at this age and however many years God has given him is to mentor younger men, um, emotionally, and business wise and financially, to invest into them. And the only payment he requires is a muffin, that they
That's awesome.
have coffee and a muffin. And 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 he finds great reward in extracting from his story both his huge successes and some abysmal failures to equip other men to live lives better, whatever chair they find themselves in at the moment. And that's really the rocking chair. It can be a place where you just rest on your laurels, so to speak, and reflect on all the good times or all the bad times. Or you can become the person who, like Socrates or Aristotle, or who you're mentoring, people using the wisdom that you've gleaned over the years of sitting in those other chairs to be able to continue making a difference. Doesn't mean that you can't actually get up out of the rocking chair and go to Malawi and help with water wells like Denny does. Um, doesn't mean that you can't get out of the rocking chair and invest in ministry at a church or whatever. But that the best one of the best uses of the rocking chair is in mentoring and passing on to your children, your grandchildren, and to others the wisdom that you've gleaned, particularly through the hard times that you've experienced.
Man, so good. And Pam says she's got one foot on the rocking chair and one on the business chair.
We love you, Pam.
Well, I mean, because one of the things that I've noticed in leaders, and I'm so glad you brought up the individual you just did, is that those that because sometimes I think we can struggle as we get later in life for like relevancy. I was in the middle of the game, I got it all, I'm making deals, I'm making moves. And I've seen two different kinds of people at that phase. One is still trying to position themselves in direct competition with the next generation, and the next generation just kind of tunes them out, even if they have great things to say, actually. And I've seen that happen where it's like, listen, I can't hear constantly whatever you did. But what's interesting and fascinating about what you said, and it's so true, is the most relevant people I've ever met to the day that they die, they take their wealth of information and leverage it to pour into the next generation.
Mm,
And because the lessons they have are timeless.
yeah,
They don't age. And it's so cool to see when a person is, like you're talking about, is willing to pour into the next generation. And you're never, the great irony is when you take on that servant heart and mentality, you stay relevant
yeah,
because there's a necessity for what you have.
yeah.
So that's just so cool. And then of course the kind of the driving theme of that I was trying to also, is in the baby chairs. The first time you're looking up and you say the words mine, this is mine. You don't understand. Give me that, mine. And it feels like that becomes the eternal struggle, not eternal, but a temporal struggle for the rest of our lives, is balancing this disposition that is looking up for all of our needs and struggling with what do we own and what is ours, and actually what is a good and gracious gift from God that we've been entrusted to steward while we have a breath in our body. And that feels like that tension of having a mentality and a mindset of gratitude and grace and appreciation for God's good gifts. Or do we find those things as we hit that business chair? Is there a turn at some point in our lives where we go, yeah, I am that good. Yeah, I have done this. Yeah, I walked through that door. In fact, I kicked it down. God didn't open it. And then that's where we kind of get off track. I mean, would that be a fair analysis? Is you see that kind of that struggle of acknowledging what comes from God, and that kind of starts early on, or
Yeah.
am I mistaken there?
Well, in order to give something, it has to be yours. You can't legitimately give something that doesn't belong to you. And so, my pastor, Kerry Shook, uses the concept of catch and release.
Hmm.
And he says, the idea is that you have to claim your power, you have to claim your strength, you have to claim your virtues, and then release them both in generosity to others and also in surrender to God. because
Hmm.
because it is true. If you say to me, Paul, that really blessed me,
Hmm.
when you gave me that, jacket, or gave me that time, or whatever. I'm like, yay. I want to claim that God used me to generate value for you.
Yeah,
In the same breath, though, I can say, yeah, God gave it to me, so you can thank him. Because there's that sense of us being a conduit,
I love
the
that.
vehicle for God's grace. But it has to be ours. We have to hold, we have to claim it for ourselves before we can release it to someone else. And so that feeling that this is mine, this is a gift from God. He gave uniquely to me, that if I
Yeah,
claim it well, I can then feel like it's something worthy of giving. I think I shared in another video about how when I went to a birthday party as a kid, I sometimes had a gift that was pretty crappy because we didn't have much money. And
yeah,
so I didn't feel good about giving the gift to my friend because I didn't feel good about it. We have to claim the goodness of God's gifts in us. We have to say, this is mine, and God blessed me with it in order to go like, hey, I got something for you. I think
Yeah.
you're gonna like it, like,
Yeah.
and then to, to meet with someone, and share that gift in a way that says, God gave this to me. I want to pass it on to you.
I love it. And I think to your point then where you're kind of going is that there's then a level of responsibility and accountability
Yeah.
within us for stewarding that well. Right on. Okay,
And
well, go ahead.
one other thing about the mind concept is that the main value of a child learning to say mine is that it's a way of the child realizing that I cannot control everything, but there are some things I absolutely get to control. And for all of us, the thing that we most want to claim as mine is my soul, my precious soul, my happiness, my peace of mind, my well being is mine. And I'm not going to let anybody take it away from me, no
Mm,
matter what they do. And
right.
that's really where we find our place to stand, so that whatever you do to me, good or bad, um, it does not move me from my core identity, which is mine. And it really is the subject of Micaeus' video.
Yeah. Whose you are. I love that because it goes right back to the core of identity, identity, identity.
And
Yeah.
belonging. It's,
And
you're
belonging.
mine. God says you're mine and I am yours. And that's where that, clinging to the one thing that I know is mine, and you can't take it away from me.
Right.
And my belonging to God, my identity with Him, is something that is unshakable. You may think I'm the biggest jerk on the planet, and I may need to take a look at that. But if I've surrendered to God, then my identity is grounded in belonging, and not who I am, but whose I am, as you
Yeah.
said so well.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that tie-in because by the time you get to that, second to last chair, and you look back, that's who's the hero of the story, but yet you're a part of that story, and you were made to be a part of that story. That's fantastic, fantastic. So, uh, as we are, before we dwell too much on this, I will say we are week 52 of this podcast.
Really?
Yep. The
No
Westcliffe
way.
Climb is a 1-year-old. That's
Wow.
right.
That's
That's
awesome.
right. So I think we each go get a small little birthday cake and we just crush it with our hands. I think
Happy
that's what a
birthday
1-year-old
to
does. Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Happy birthday to us, a little 1-year-old baby podcast. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of which, as we wrap this up, why don't you give us a little insight about what your ministry's been up to, Hidden Manna? What do we got going on?
So we had one of the chaplains from Plain State Jail, uh, which is out near Dayton. It's a women's prison, and they desperately need to upgrade their sound system for the chapel for their services,
Mm,
and they have need for some equipment that is going to set them back about $1,000, which they do not have. So I'll be posting on Facebook in the next few days uh, fundraiser that you can give to, or you can go to hiddenmanna.org. And if you want to help out with that, the chaplain and the women at Plain State over by Dayton will be so grateful that they can more beautifully worship God in those walls that they're confined by.
wow. I love it. I love it. I love it. Big shout out to Woodlands Church, of course, their continued partnership and support of this endeavor is always fantastic. Micaeus Niwe, fantastic job this week. Michael Middleton did a great job in his musical presentation for sure. We got to get Michael on here pretty soon. Michael is got so much going on. Of course, Tavares Linzer, Church of the King. Thank you guys. over there, Pilgrim Lutheran Church. Love you all. My home church here in Houston. Love you guys. And thank you, of course, for your continued support and advocacy of this endeavor. Paul, would you be so kind as to close us in prayer?
Love to. God, we come to your chair. Um, you tell us that we can approach the throne of grace with boldness and find grace to help us in our time of need. And for many who are listening or watching, there's a specific need for you to engage in a way that would bring healing and hope, freedom. And God, we just mentioned the need for this equipment at Plain State. We know you're the source of all good gifts, and just pray that you put it on people's hearts to give generously to that need. God, we know that we do claim your goodness, and we come into the world completely dependent and helpless, looking up for provision. Um, Over the course of our lives, we amass a lot of things, and as we um, end up moving toward the wheelchair, we have to let go of a lot. And as we let go of our identity in our jobs or our parenting or pastoring, whatever it is that we do, drive us deeper into our identity and not who we are, but whose we are. We belong to you. Thank you for claiming us. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for predetermining to make us conform to the image of your dear Son. Make us more like Jesus day by day. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We love you guys so very much, and we will see you this time next week. Bye.
Bye.